Wakia got the maid pregnant while his wife was trying to be the perfect Christian wife, refusing to
I just
dress
don't
the way he
understand why
liked,
you insist on
the
dressing this
way
way
the
all the
maid
time.
did. But the truth behind their marriage was more complicated than anyone knew. Like and subscribe quickly. Let's begin. Amara had a small routine she followed. Every morning before 6 a.m., she was already dressed, already pressed, already armored. Long skirts, loose blouses, scarves when she wasn't wearing her church cap. No perfume except the rose water she sometimes dabbed on her wrists for prayer meetings. She believed her body was a temple. She believed modesty was virtue. She believed genuinely, deeply, that a good Christian wife dressed to honor God first, her husband second, and the world not at all. Wakia believed differently. He was very open about it. Amara, he said her name like it was a sigh. You look like you're going to a burial. She turned from the mirror, smiled softly. I'm going to Thursday morning devotion, Wakia. But you could at least, he gestured vaguely at her outfit. Something fitted. Something that shows you have a shape. You have a beautiful shape. You know that? I know, she said simply, picking up her Bible.
I just don't understand why you insist on dressing this way all the time.
Because as a Christian, I believe I must cover my body.
God made it. I don't need to display it. He said nothing else. He never did. But the silence that followed her out of the door every morning was not peaceful. He was disappointed. And disappointed silences left long enough have a way of becoming decisions. It was at his colleague Emika's dinner that Amara first felt the crack in the ground beneath her feet. The restaurant was full. It was loud and lively, filled with laughter and the smell of pepper soup and cold bottles of Heineken. Wakia walked in looking sharp in a fitted shirt and good shoes, confidence in every step. Amara walked beside him, slightly behind, wearing a navy blue dress that reached her ankles. Emeka saw them from across the room and raised his bottle. Wakia! You came! And you brought... He squinted through the noise. Your sister? The table erupted. Amara froze. Wakia did not correct him immediately. He scratched the back of his neck, laughed along with the table, and then 3 full seconds later said, without warmth, without pride, "This is my wife." The damage was already done. Amara sat beside him the entire evening and he barely looked at her. He talked, joked, leaned across the table to engage with everyone except her. When someone tried to bring her into a conversation, Wakia changed the subject before she could respond. While they were going back home in the car, Amara said, "You were ashamed of me tonight." I wasn't ashamed. You didn't introduce me. I didn't have to. You're my wife. They didn't know that, Wakia. Your friend thought I was your sister. Emika is drunk half the time. Don't read into it. She looked out the window at the Joss night, hawkers and headlights and the distant sound of a generator somewhere. And she prayed quietly. For understanding, for patience, for God to soften her husband's heart. She did not pray for herself. She did not think about how she was not satisfying her husband's desires. That was her first mistake. They attended a birthday party in the GRA, music pumping, women in bodycon dresses and heels, from men in sharp kaftan shirts. Wakia, alive in the way he never was at home, holding court at the bar with 3 men, laughing the big laugh that Amara hadn't heard in their apartment in months. Amara sat alone at a corner table with juice in her hand. She wore her church dress. She looked like she had wandered in from somewhere else entirely. A woman in gold stopped at her table. "Are you with the church group?" There was no church group. Amara excused herself and went to find her husband. She found him with a woman in red. The woman's hand was on his arm. Wakia was laughing, really laughing, head thrown back. And then he saw Amara coming, and the smile did not disappear. It dimmed, not from guilt, from inconvenience. Hey, he stepped slightly away from the woman in red. I was just coming to check on you. Can we go? Amara kept her voice even. I'm tired. He glanced back at the party, at the music, at the life he was clearly living without her. I'll get you a driver. She stared at him. You'll get me a driver, she repeated. Amara, it's early. It's 11:30, Wakia. He was home at 4 a.m. She was still awake, sitting in the dark, Bible on her lap, asking God what she was doing wrong. She didn't consider, not even for a moment, that she might need to ask herself the same question. Her name was Vera, 22 years old. From a small town in Imo State, she had come to work for them 8 months ago through an agency. Efficient, quiet, good with chores. She was also everything Wakia had ever described wanting to see when he came home. Fitted house shorts, cropped tops, no hair loose or in a low ponytail. She padded around the apartment barefoot, unhurried, unbothered. She wasn't trying to seduce anyone. She was just living the way young women live when they think no one consequential is watching. But Wakia was watching. He started coming home earlier. He started finding reasons to be in whichever room Vera happened to be in. Amara noticed none of this. She was at Bible study on Tuesdays, choir practice on Thursdays, morning devotion before Wakia even woke up on Saturdays, full church service on Sundays. She ran a women's fellowship. She counseled other women. She prayed for hours on end. She was, by every measure, a devoted Christian woman and a profoundly absent wife. Amara, we haven't been intimate in 3 weeks. She was still on her knees beside the bed, lips moving in prayer. Amara, let me finish, Wakia. He lay down, stared at the ceiling. He knew the number exactly because he had counted every single day. When she finally climbed into bed, he turned to face her. I am your husband, he said quietly. I have needs. I know I'm just tired tonight. You're always tired. I have a lot going on. So do I. A pause. I've told you how I feel, about how you dress, about how you never... Wakia. She turned to face him. Her eyes were patient but firm. I am not going to dishonor my body for any reason, not even for you. You knew who I was when you married me. A long silence settled between them. Yeah, he said finally. I did. He turned away, and the distance between them, already wide, continued to grow wider. Nobody said what they were both beginning to feel. That this marriage, warm and alive at the beginning, was slowly going cold. That something was dying in the quiet spaces between them. That a man can only reach for someone so many times before he stops reaching. Wakia stopped reaching. And the woman in the next room, the one in the fitted shorts who laughed at her own jokes, was always within reach. It was a Tuesday night, almost midnight. Wakia had just returned from a late business meeting. The apartment was quiet. A text from Amara on his phone. At vigil tonight, won't be back till morning. You'll find your food in the warmer. God bless you. He set the phone face down, poured himself wine. He was tired in the way that has nothing to do with sleep. The kind of tired that comes from feeling invisible in your own home, from wanting something simple and watching it walk past you every morning with a Bible tucked under its arm. Vera, footsteps in the hallway. She appeared at the door, loose shorts, a tank top, hair half loose from a bun. She looked at him with that easy, uncomplicated manner of someone with nothing to hide. Sir, bring me some fruit, sliced, and more wine. She went to get what he asked for. He reached for his glass and knocked it. Red wine spread across the center table, down the edge, onto the cream rug below. Vera! She came with a cloth. knelt at his feet, started to clean. And in the quiet of that room, no church bells, no prayer, no cotton nightgowns, nothing but the soft sound of her moving on the floor beside him. Wakia stood, walked slowly around the table, and stopped just behind her. "Don't move," he said,
Don't
very
move.
quietly. She remained still. The room held its breath. And then something that shouldn't have happened between them happened. Afterwards, the apartment was very quiet. Vera went to her room. Wakia refilled his glass and sat alone in the dark for a long time, telling himself it meant nothing, telling himself it was weakness, telling himself Amara would never know. But a lie told at midnight does not die at dawn. It moves into the walls. It breathes in the furniture. It waits. The next morning, Amara came back from the night vigil feeling genuinely at peace. She heated the leftover stew, made tea, hummed a hymn under her breath, kissed Wakia on the cheek. He stiffened, then relaxed. She noticed nothing, because she trusted, because she was looking inward, not outward, because the enemy was not at the gate. The enemy was already inside, eating her food and cleaning her floors. It happened again and again. 3 months of careful lies, of rearranged timelines, of Wakia becoming expert at looking innocent at the breakfast table, of Vera beginning to understand, in that quiet, calculating way of hers, that this situation, uncomfortable as it was, might also be an opportunity. Because Vera was not a foolish girl. She had come from nothing, truly nothing. A one-room apartment in Owerri, a mother who sold ground nuts by the roadside, a future that looked, from where she stood, like it would always smell like kerosene and small rooms. And here was a man of means, a man who preferred her company to his wife's, who looked at her the way a man looks at a woman he cannot resist, who was, in every quiet way, already choosing her. She started to want more, not just an affair, a life. Vera was not feeling well and needed to do a medical checkup. She went to the clinic. The clinic was on Rayfield Road. It was small and clean. It had plastic chairs, a ceiling fan, the smell of disinfectant. Vera sat with her hands folded in her lap. A nurse called her name. She went in. She came out 10 minutes later holding a folded paper. She read it in the hallway, one hand against the wall to steady herself. She was pregnant, 8 weeks. She stood there for a full minute, just breathing. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, private, the smile of someone who has just realized that the chess piece they've been holding is actually a queen. A child was permanent. A child was a claim. A child was a future she could hold in her hands. She folded the paper carefully and put it in the pocket of her dress. And she went home to wait for exactly the right moment. She didn't wait long. Early evening, Wakia was on the couch in the sitting room, in his work jacket, phone in his hand. Amara was sitting at the dining table, folding church circulars, humming softly. Vera came from the hallway holding the paper. She was looking only at Wakia. Amara glanced up and smiled. "Vera, have you eaten? There's stew." Vera held out the paper. Wakia looked at it. His face went absolutely still. He took it from her hand, read it. And then, before he could stop himself, he had already said, "Oh, no." It came out loud, involuntary, like a man who had stepped barefoot onto something sharp and irreversible. Amara looked up from the table. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." He moved to fold the paper, a hand pressing it to his chest. "Wakia, what is on that paper?" "I said it's nothing." She was already on her feet. He held it away from her, but she was quick, quicker than he expected, or maybe she already knew, the way wives always know before they know, and she pulled it from his hand. She read it. The room became very, very quiet. She read it again. She looked at Vera. Vera looked back at her without apology, without shame, with only the calm expression of someone who had already calculated the outcome and found it acceptable. Amara folded the paper, set it on the table. She did not scream. She did not throw anything. She did not call Vera a single name. She walked to the bedroom, packed one bag, came back out, picked up her Bible and her phone, walked to the door. Amara! Wakia was on his feet. Don't! Her voice was so soft it was almost not there at all. Just don't! The door closed, and the silence that followed was not the quiet of prayer or peace or patience. It was the silence of a marriage on its knees, wondering whether it would get back up. If you've ever been made to feel invisible by the person who was supposed to see you most, comment below. Because Amara's story is just getting started. And trust me, you are not ready for what's coming. Mama Ngozi's kitchen smelled like onugbu soup and groundnut oil and the particular warmth of a house that has held a family for decades. Amara sat across from her mother at the kitchen table. Her eyes were dry. Somehow, that was worse than tears. Mama Ngozi listened to everything without interrupting, without gasping, without reaching for her daughter's hand. She just listened. In the way a woman who has lived 63 years listens, with her whole body still as standing water. When Amara finished, Mama Ngozi poured 2 cups of zobo and pushed one across the table. Drink. Mama, my husband got the housemaid. I heard you. Drink. Amara drank. A long silence. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. Outside, a neighbor's radio played. Then Mama Ngozi said, "Your father used to say that a woman can be so busy serving the Lord that she forgets she's also supposed to serve her home." Amara's jaw tightened. "So this is my fault." "I didn't say fault." Her mother's voice was careful, deliberate. "I said balance. There is a difference. I was being a good Christian woman, Mama." "Yes," Mama Ngozi nodded. "A very good Christian woman and a very invisible wife." She folded her hands on the table. "Amara, I need to ask you something. When last did you dress for your husband? Not for church, not for God, for him. When last did you let him see you? All of you." Silence. He told me he wanted me to, and you told him your body was for God." A longer silence. "Yes." Mama Ngozi exhaled slowly. "My daughter, the Bible you love so much, the same Bible says the body of a wife belongs to her husband, and the body of a husband to his wife. It says not to deprive one another. What that man did was wrong. I am not excusing him, but you left him hungry in your own house, and a hungry man will eat wherever food is offered." Amara stared at the table. "So what do I do?" Mama Ngozi smiled. Slow. The smile of a woman who has been waiting for precisely this question. "First thing tomorrow," she said, "we go to the market." Bukuru main market was color and noise, and the smell of fresh fabric and pepper, and exhaust fumes and human beings living loudly. Amara moved through it with her mother, like someone learning a language she used to speak. She touched fabric and pulled her hand back and touched it again. Tried on earrings and took them off. Stood in front of a tailor's dusty mirror, holding a deep, burgundy-fitted dress against herself. The tailor said, without looking up from his pins, "That one will do things to your husband, madam." Amara looked at herself in that mirror, and for the first time in years, she wondered when she had stopped looking like herself. She had put away the woman who turned heads in university. Deliberately, carefully, as an act of devotion, she had believed she was giving something holy. She had not realized she was also taking something from her marriage. She bought 6 outfits. She bought perfumes. She bought earrings. She had to learn to walk in again. 3 days later, she stood in front of a full-length mirror in the spare room at her mother's house. She wore a fitted Ankara wrap dress, waist cinched, hair down, earrings catching the light, perfume on her throat and wrists. She barely recognized herself, not because she looked wrong, because she looked right. She picked up her phone and called Wakia. He answered on the second ring, his voice cautious and guilty and raw all at once. "Amara, I'm coming home," she said. "Be there." She hung up before he could respond. He heard the key in the lock and stood up from the couch. He had been rehearsing what to say for 3 days. He had versions of it in his head. The apology, the explanation, the plea. He had organized them by sincerity. He had discarded the ones that sounded like excuses. The door opened, and Amara walked in, fitted green lace, hair on her shoulders, a few loose strands framing her face. The perfume entered the room before she did, something warm and unmistakable, the smell of a woman who had decided to stop disappearing. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her, the way he had been looking at other women for years, the way he had forgotten to look at his wife. From the kitchen came a small sound, a pot set down, then silence, then careful footsteps. Vera appeared in the kitchen doorway. She saw Amara. Amara saw Vera. A sudden silence filled the apartment. Vera's face did not move, but something behind her eyes did. Something that shifted and cracked like ice under unexpected weight. Because the woman standing in that sitting room was not the Amara she had calculated into her plans. The Amara she had calculated was the one in the long skirts. The one who prayed quietly and disappeared into church activities and left the house empty in ways that a young woman from Owerri could feel. This woman was different. This woman had walked back into her own home like she had always known it belonged to her, and had simply been waiting until she was ready to claim it fully. Vera looked at Wakia. Wakia was not looking at her. He was still looking at his wife. And in that single moment, every plan Vera had folded neatly in her pocket, every future she had stitched together around that pregnancy test result, every version of herself she had imagined stepping into, everything began to break apart. She went back into the kitchen. She was not sure of what to do next. She stood at the counter and pressed both hands flat on the surface and told herself to breathe. But something was wrong. Something had been wrong since that morning, actually. A dull, persistent ache low in her abdomen that she had been quietly ignoring for 2 days. She had told herself it was nerves. She had told herself it was the pregnancy settling. She had told herself a lot of things in the past few weeks that she needed to believe. The ache sharpened. She gripped the counter harder. From the sitting room, she could hear Amara's voice, warm, composed, unhurried, and Wakia responding in a register she had never heard from him before. Soft, reaching, like a man trying to find his way back to something he had almost lost forever. The pain came again, stronger this time. Vera bent forward slightly over the counter, and then it hit her. Sudden, searing, nothing like what early pregnancy discomfort was supposed to feel like. This was something else entirely. Something tearing. Something deeply, terrifyingly wrong. She tried to call out. What came out was barely a sound. She slid down the kitchen cabinet to the floor. Amara heard it first. A soft, heavy sound from the kitchen, like something falling but not quite breaking. She was on her feet before she had consciously decided to move, and she pushed open the kitchen door and found Vera on the floor, one hand pressed to her abdomen, her face the color of ash. Amara knelt without hesitating. Vera, look at me." Vera's eyes found her face. There was pain in them, and underneath the pain, something that looked almost like relief. The relief of someone who had been carrying something too heavy for too long and had finally been permitted to set it down. Wakia appeared in the doorway. He took one look at the scene on the kitchen floor and the color left his face. Amara looked up at him over her shoulder, her voice completely steady. Call a taxi. Right now. At the clinic on Oguta Road, the doctor on duty took one look at Vera and moved quickly. Too quickly for it to be routine. Wakia stood in the corridor outside the examination room, while Amara sat in the waiting room with her hands folded in her lap. Not praying, just thinking, listening to the particular silence of a building where serious things were happening behind closed doors. The doctor came out 40 minutes later. He looked at Wakia with the measured expression of someone who had learned to deliver difficult information without drama. The pregnancy has been lost, he said quietly. She is stable now. She will recover. Wakia closed his eyes briefly. What happened? He asked. The doctor paused. Then he said something that nobody in that corridor was prepared for. Mr. Wakia, this was an ectopic pregnancy. The embryo had implanted outside the uterus, in the fallopian tube. It was never viable. It could never have survived. He held Wakia's gaze. This pregnancy was going to end this way, regardless of anything that happened today. Without medical intervention, it would have become life-threatening within days. The young woman is fortunate. It's ruptured now. Here, it's close to a facility. Wakia stood very still. She didn't know, he said. She had a scan 3 weeks ago at another clinic. They noted a concern and advised her to come back for a follow-up. She did not come back. The corridor was very quiet. Wakia thought about the paper Vera had held out in the sitting room with the confidence of someone playing a winning hand. He thought about the way she had looked at him when she delivered it. Calm, certain, her whole future rearranged around that single document. She had not known, or perhaps she had half known and chosen, the way frightened people sometimes choose, to look away from the information that could collapse everything. The pregnancy she had built her plans around, the child she had believed would change her life, the future she had folded carefully in her pocket. It had never existed the way she thought it did. It had never been real. Wakia walked slowly to the waiting room and stood in the doorway. Amara looked up at him. He opened his mouth and then closed it because there were no words that were adequate for what had just happened, for the full, staggering weight of consequence that had arrived from every direction at once. She's stable, he said finally. Amara nodded. She looked at him for a long moment. This man she had chosen, this man who had broken something between them, this man who was standing in a clinic corridor at night because of the choices he had made in their home. She looked at him and she did not look away. Sit down, Wakia, she said quietly. We're going to wait until she's okay, and then we're going to go home, and then we're going to talk. He sat down beside her, and for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, they sat in the same room in silence, and it did not feel like distance. It felt like the beginning of something. Painful, honest, and necessary. But a beginning. The next morning, Vera sat on the edge of her bed with her bags packed, her face washed clean. She looked younger without the armor of her easy confidence. She looked like what she actually was, a young girl far from home who had gambled on the wrong things. Amara came in without knocking. She pulled the desk chair around and sat facing her. They looked at each other for a moment. I'm sorry, Vera said. Her voice was small and genuine in the way things only become genuine when there is nothing left to protect. I knew what I was doing. I knew it was wrong. I'm sorry. Amara was quiet. Are you okay? Physically? Vera blinked. She had not expected that to be the first question. Yes. The doctor said I'll be fine. Good. Amara folded her hands in her lap. Then I need you to leave today. I'll give you this month's salary and the next, but you cannot stay in this house. I know. And, Vera, I'm not going to destroy your name. I'm not going to call your family or follow you with what happened here. You're young. You made choices. So did he. She held Vera's gaze. But this house belongs to this marriage, and this marriage is not finished. Vera looked at her hands for a long moment. Then she looked up. How? She whispered. How are you? I'm not calm, Amara said simply. I am angry. I have been angry for days, and I will probably be angry for longer than that. But I chose to marry that man, and I also chose to disappear from that marriage. We both have things to answer for. She stood. Go well, Vera. She left the room, and Vera sat alone on the edge of her bed with her packed bags and the silence of a future she would now have to build from a completely different foundation than the one she had imagined. She thought about the doctor's words, about the scan she had been told to return for and hadn't, about the pregnancy she had been so certain would save her. It had never been what she thought it was. None of it had. She picked up her bags, and she walked out of that house for the last time.